The scorching Afghan sun beat down mercilessly on the rocky outcrop, where Master Chief Petty Officer Jake Morrison adjusted his scope for the 15th time that morning. His weathered hands, steady as granite despite 3 tours in the desert, gripped the Barrett M82 sniper rifle with practiced precision. Beside him, his spotter Sergeant Mike Chin squinted through his binoculars, sweat beading on his forehead despite the early hour. Targets still moving erratically, Chin whispered, his voice barely audible above the desert wind. Range is 1,200 meters, but he keeps ducking behind those concrete barriers. Morrison had been tracking this high-value target for 6 days. Ahmed Hassan, a bomb maker responsible for at least 12 IED attacks that had claimed the lives of coalition forces and countless civilians, had finally surfaced at this remote compound 30 kilometers outside Kandahar. Intelligence suggested he was planning something big, something that could devastate the upcoming peace talks scheduled for the following week. The SEAL team had been inserted under cover of darkness, establishing their overwatch position on a ridge that provided perfect line of sight to the compound below. Morrison was considered one of the finest marksmen in the Navy, with over 40 confirmed kills under his belt. His record was impeccable, his reputation legendary among Special Operations Forces. Yet somehow, this target seemed to slip away every time he had a clear shot. Winds picking up again, Morrison muttered, feeling the familiar frustration building in his chest. The desert was notorious for its unpredictable wind patterns, and the heat shimmer rising from the sun-baked earth created optical distortions that could throw off even the most experienced shooter. Reading 12 miles per hour, gusting to 15, coming from the northeast. Chen made the calculations in his head, factoring in the distance, wind speed, temperature, and humidity. Adjust left 0.7 mils, up 0.3, he advised. Morrison made the adjustments and settled into position, controlling his breathing as he had done thousands of times before. Through his scope, he watched Hassan emerge from the main building, talking animatedly with 2 other men. The target was wearing traditional Afghan clothing that helped him blend into the civilian population, making positive identification crucial before taking the shot. The crosshairs settled on Hassan's center mass. Morrison's finger found the trigger, applying steady pressure as he exhaled slowly. The familiar weight of the trigger began to break when suddenly, Hassan ducked behind a concrete wall, disappearing from view completely. Damn it, Morrison breathed, lifting his eye from the scope. This was the 4th time in 2 days that he'd had Hassan in his sights, only to have the shot window close at the last second. Chun lowered his binoculars with a frustrated sigh. It's like he knows we're here, Chief. Morrison didn't respond immediately. In his 12 years as a SEAL sniper, he had never encountered a target this elusive. Hassan seemed to have an uncanny ability to sense danger, always moving at the exact moment when a shot presented itself. Intelligence suggested the bomb maker was paranoid to the point of obsession, constantly changing his routines and never staying in one location for more than a few minutes at a time. The radio crackled in Morrison's ear. Overwatch, this is base. Status report. Morrison keyed his mic. Base, Overwatch. Target is mobile but staying within the compound. Multiple opportunities, but no clean shots yet. Copy, Overwatch. Be advised, we're receiving intel that suggests the target may be moving his operation within the next 24 hours. This could be our last window. Morrison felt the weight of that information settle on his shoulders. Hassan wasn't just another insurgent. He was a master bomb maker whose expertise had been responsible for introducing new types of improvised explosive devices that were nearly impossible to detect. His elimination would save countless lives and potentially prevent a major attack on the peace conference. As the day wore on, Morrison and Chen maintained their vigil. The compound below showed typical activity for a rural Afghan dwelling. Women moved about their daily tasks, children played in the dusty courtyard, and men came and went on various errands. Hassan appeared sporadically, but never long enough for a guaranteed shot. By late afternoon, Morrison's back ached from maintaining the prone shooting position, and his eyes were strained from hours of staring through the scope. Chen had rotated through several different observation positions, trying to find an angle that might provide a better shooting opportunity, but the compound's layout seemed designed to frustrate long-range shooters. Chief, I've been thinking, Chun said during a brief break while they hydrated and check their equipment. Maybe we're approaching this wrong. Hassan's obviously experienced enough to know how to avoid sniper fire. He's probably dealt with this before. Morrison nodded grimly. Afghanistan was a country where warfare had been a way of life for decades. Many of the insurgent leaders had survived multiple attempts on their lives and had developed sophisticated countermeasures against various forms of attack. Hassan's elusiveness suggested he was far more than just a bomb maker. He was a tactician who understood the threats he faced. As evening approached, the compound's activity began to wind down. Morrison had counted at least 8 different times when Hassan had presented himself as a target, but each opportunity had lasted no more than a few seconds before the bomb maker sought cover again. The radio crackled again. Overwatch, base. We're picking up chatter that suggests the target is planning to move before dawn. Intelligence indicates he's constructed a device that he intends to deploy against the peace talks. You need to neutralize the threat tonight. Morrison felt his jaw tighten. The pressure was mounting, and, with each missed opportunity, the stakes grew higher. He had never failed a mission of this importance, and the thought of Hassan slipping away with a weapon capable of derailing peace efforts was unacceptable. Chun, we're going to wait him out, Morrison decided. He has to expose himself eventually, and when he does, I'll be ready. As darkness fell over the Afghan landscape, Morrison settled in for what could be a long night. The compound below was illuminated by sparse lighting, creating pools of yellow glow separated by deep shadows. Hassan's movements would be even more unpredictable in the darkness, but Morrison had night vision capabilities and years of experience shooting in low-light conditions. Around midnight, movement in the compound caught Chen's attention. "Chief, I've got activity near the main building. Looks like they're loading equipment into a vehicle." Morrison swung his rifle toward the compound and peered through his night vision scope. Several figures were indeed moving equipment, working with the urgency of people preparing to leave quickly. Hassan appeared briefly in the doorway of the main building, supervising the loading operation. "Range is still 1,200 meters, Chen whispered. "Wind has died down to maybe 5 miles per hour, steady from the east." Morrison made his adjustments and settled into position. This could be his best opportunity yet. Hassan was directing the loading operation, which meant he would need to remain in the open for longer periods than usual. The crosshairs found Hassan's silhouette in the green glow of the night vision scope. Morrison controlled his breathing, waiting for the perfect moment when the target would be still enough for a guaranteed hit. Hassan moved closer to the vehicle, gesturing to his men to hurry their work. Morrison's finger found the trigger, applying steady pressure as he had done countless times before. The moment stretched out, everything else fading away except for the sight picture in his scope and the feel of the trigger against his finger. Hassan paused beside the vehicle, presenting a perfect profile shot. The trigger broke with a clean snap, and Morrison felt the familiar recoil of the Barrett rifle as the massive .50 caliber bullet left the barrel at over 2,800 feet per second. Through his scope, he watched the bullet's path toward the target, confident that his aim had been true. But, in the split second before impact, Hassan bent down to pick up a piece of equipment, and the bullet passed harmlessly over his head, striking the concrete wall behind him with a shower of sparks and dust. The compound erupted into chaos. Men scattered for cover, shouting warnings and seeking defensive positions. Within seconds, Hassan had disappeared into the building, and all movement in the compound ceased as the inhabitants realized they were under sniper fire. Morrison lowered his rifle, feeling a combination of frustration and disbelief wash over him. It was as if Hassan possessed some supernatural ability to sense incoming danger. Chen was staring at him with an expression of amazement. "Chief, I've never seen anything like that." It was like he knew exactly when to move. Morrison didn't respond immediately. He was mentally reviewing the shot, trying to understand what had gone wrong. His aim had been perfect, his calculations correct, and the conditions ideal for a long-range shot. Yet somehow, Hassan had avoided what should have been certain death by mere inches. The radio came alive with urgent chatter as the compound's defenders began searching for the source of the sniper fire. Morrison knew they had perhaps 30 minutes before enemy forces would begin moving toward their position. The element of surprise was lost, and Hassan was now fully aware that he was being hunted by a professional marksman. "Base, This is Overwatch, Morrison reported reluctantly. Shot fired, target missed. Compound is now aware of our presence. The response was immediate and tense. Overwatch, base. You need to relocate and re-establish contact. The target cannot be allowed to escape with that device. Morrison began breaking down his shooting position. His mind, he had never failed to eliminate a high-value target when given the opportunity, but Hassan was testing every skill and instinct he had developed over his military career. The hunt was far from over, and Morrison was determined to prove that no target was beyond the reach of a dedicated professional. The night air carried the sound of vehicles starting in the compound below, and Morrison realized that Hassan was already beginning his escape. Time was running out, and the stakes continued to rise with each passing hour. The bomb maker's device remained a threat to innocent lives, and Morrison knew that failure was not an option. As they moved through the darkness toward their new position, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would test him in ways he had never experienced before. Hassan had proven to be a worthy adversary, but Morrison's reputation and the lives of countless innocents depended on his ability to adapt and overcome the challenges ahead. 3 hours after Morrison's missed shot, the SEAL team had relocated to a secondary observation post 2 kilometers east of their original position. The new vantage point offered a different angle on the compound, but Hassan and his men had made no appearance since the failed assassination attempt. Intelligence chatter suggested the bomb maker was still in the area, but his exact location remained unknown. Morrison lay prone behind his rifle, fatigue weighing on his shoulders like a lead blanket. Chun monitored the radio frequencies, trying to intercept any communications that might reveal Hassan's whereabouts. The compound below remained eerily quiet, with only occasional movement from what appeared to be sentries posted at strategic points. "Chief, we've got company," Chun whispered, pointing toward a dust cloud approaching from the south. Through his binoculars, Morrison could see a convoy of 3 vehicles moving rapidly toward the compound. The lead vehicle flew a small flag that intelligence had identified as belonging to Hassan's network. Morrison adjusted his scope and focused on the approaching convoy. The vehicles were moving in a defensive formation, with armed men visible in each one. As they reached the compound's outer perimeter, the convoy split up, with 2 vehicles taking different routes to confuse any potential observers. The radio crackled with an urgent transmission from base. "Overwatch, base. Intercepted communications suggest the target is preparing for immediate extraction. Unknown aircraft inbound to your area. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. This is your last opportunity." Morrison felt his pulse quicken. An aircraft extraction meant Hassan would soon be beyond their reach, potentially taking his devastating weapon with him to a location where it could be deployed against innocent targets. The pressure to succeed had just increased exponentially. Through his scope, Morrison watched as armed men emerged from the compound and took defensive positions around the perimeter. Hassan's paranoia was clearly well-founded. He had surrounded himself with experienced fighters who knew how to protect a high-value asset. The compound had transformed from a simple dwelling into a fortified position in a matter of hours. Range to the main building is 1,800 meters from this position, Chin calculated. Wind is variable, shifting between northeast and east, 5 to 10 miles per hour. Morrison made mental notes of the environmental conditions while studying the compound's new defensive layout. Hassan's men had positioned themselves to eliminate blind spots and create overlapping fields of fire. Any approach to the compound would be met with concentrated resistance from multiple directions. As dawn broke over the Afghan landscape, Morrison noticed increased activity within the compound. Through his scope, he could see men preparing equipment and loading vehicles, clear signs that Hassan was preparing to leave. The bomb maker himself remained frustratingly invisible, clearly aware that sniper fire remained a significant threat. The morning sun created challenging shooting conditions as heat shimmer began rising from the sun-baked earth. Morrison knew that these optical distortions would make precision shooting increasingly difficult as the day progressed. The window for a successful shot was rapidly closing. Around mid-morning, Morrison spotted movement that made his blood run cold. 2 women emerged from the main building, both wearing traditional Afghan dress that concealed their features. One walked with the confident stride of someone familiar with the compound's layout, while the other moved more cautiously, studying the surrounding terrain with the careful attention of a professional. "Chun, take a look at those two women," Morrison said quietly. "Something's not right about the one on the left." Chun adjusted his binoculars and focused on the pair. "The tall one. Yeah, she's definitely not moving like a local. Look at how she's scanning the perimeter. That's tactical awareness." Morrison studied the woman through his scope, noting the way she carried herself despite the concealing robes. Her movements suggested extensive training and combat experience, quite different from the other women in the compound who went about their daily tasks with the resigned efficiency of people living in a war zone. The mysterious woman disappeared into a smaller building on the compound's eastern edge, while the other woman continued with what appeared to be normal household activities. Morrison made note of the building's location and began calculating shooting angles in case the woman reappeared. An hour later, Chin picked up radio chatter that made the situation even more complex. "Chief, I'm hearing talk about a specialist who arrived during the night. Someone with specific skills related to the target's operation." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. Hassan's network was known for recruiting specialists from various backgrounds, including former military personnel who had switched sides for money or ideological reasons. The presence of such an individual suggested that Hassan's operation was more sophisticated than originally believed. The radio crackled with another transmission from base. "Overwatch, base. Intelligence indicates the target has recruited a sniper to provide counter-surveillance and protection. Be advised that you may be under observation." Morrison immediately began scanning the surrounding terrain, looking for any signs of a concealed sniper position. The landscape was perfect for long-range shooting, with numerous rocky outcrops and abandoned buildings that could conceal a shooter. If Hassan had indeed recruited a skilled marksman, Morrison and Chun were potentially walking into a deadly game of cat and mouse. "Chun, we need to assume we're being watched," Morrison said quietly. "Start planning fallback routes and alternative positions. If there's another sniper out there, our current location may be compromised." Chin began studying their surroundings through his binoculars, paying particular attention to positions that offered good sight lines to their current location. The rocky terrain provided numerous hiding spots, making the search for a potential counter-sniper extremely difficult. As the afternoon wore on, Morrison became increasingly aware that something fundamental had changed about their mission. The compound's defenders were moving with increased confidence, suggesting they felt protected by more than just their numerical superiority. Hassan himself remained invisible, but Morrison could sense his presence directing the operation from within the fortified buildings. Around 3 o'clock, Chin spotted movement that confirmed their worst fears. "Chief, I've got a possible sniper position in that rocky outcrop about 600 meters to our northeast." Saw what looked like scope glint for just a second. Morrison carefully turned his attention to the indicated area, using peripheral vision to avoid presenting a profile that might be visible to an observer. Through his scope, he could see the rocky formation that Chun had identified, but no obvious signs of a concealed position. The psychological pressure of being potentially under observation added a new dimension to their mission. Morrison had to maintain his focus on Hassan while simultaneously being aware that he might be in someone else's crosshairs. It was a mental challenge that few snipers ever faced, requiring the ability to hunt while being hunted. As evening approached, Morrison noticed the mysterious woman from the morning emerge from the eastern building. This time, she carried what appeared to be a rifle case, moving with the purposeful stride of someone heading to a specific destination. Morrison watched as she disappeared behind a concrete wall, only to reappear moments later on the compound's western edge. Through his scope, Morrison saw the woman begin setting up what was clearly a sniper rifle. Her movements were precise and efficient, suggesting extensive training and experience with the weapon. Within minutes, she had established a shooting position that provided excellent coverage of the approaches to the compound. "Chun, we've got a problem," Morrison said quietly. "That woman is definitely a trained sniper, and she's setting up to cover Hassan's escape route." Chin focused his binoculars on the woman's position. "Range to her location is about 400 meters. Think you can take her out?" Morrison considered the tactical situation. Engaging the female sniper would reveal his position to Hassan's other defenders, potentially triggering a firefight that would compromise their primary mission. However, leaving her in position could prove equally dangerous if she was skilled enough to threaten their operation. The radio provided additional complication with another transmission from base. Overwatch, base. Aircraft extraction has been moved up. Estimated arrival in 3 hours. Target must be neutralized before extraction occurs. Morrison felt the weight of command decisions pressing down on him. With only 3 hours remaining before Hassan's escape, he had to choose between engaging the counter-sniper and maintaining focus on the primary target. The wrong choice could result in mission failure and the deaths of innocent civilians. As darkness began to fall, Morrison made his decision. Chun, we're going to wait and watch. If that woman is as good as she appears to be, engaging her prematurely could cost us our only shot at Hassan. Chun nodded grimly, understanding the calculated risk they were taking. The presence of a skilled counter-sniper had transformed their mission from a straightforward assassination into a complex tactical problem requiring careful timing and precise execution. Through his night vision scope, Morrison watched as the compound's activity intensified. Vehicles were positioned for rapid departure, equipment was loaded and secured, and armed guards took positions along the escape routes. Hassan's extraction was clearly imminent, and Morrison realized he might have only one opportunity to complete his mission. The female sniper had settled into her position, occasionally adjusting her scope and scanning the surrounding terrain. Her professional demeanor and careful preparation suggested she was far more than a local recruit. This was someone with extensive training and combat experience. Around midnight, Morrison noticed unusual activity near the main building. Several figures emerged, including one that moved with the cautious paranoia he had come to associate with Hassan. The bomb maker was finally preparing to leave his sanctuary, but he was clearly aware of the threats that awaited him. Morrison settled behind his rifle, knowing that the next few hours would determine the success or failure of his mission. The presence of the counter-sniper had raised the stakes considerably, but Morrison's reputation had been built on successfully completing difficult missions under adverse conditions. As he prepared for what could be his final opportunity to eliminate Hassan, Morrison couldn't help but acknowledge a grudging respect for the female sniper who had so effectively complicated his mission. Whoever she was clearly a professional who understood the deadly serious nature of their confrontation. The hunt was approaching its climax, and Morrison knew that only one of them would emerge victorious from the coming engagement. At 0200 hours, Morrison watched through his night vision scope as Hassan finally emerged from the main building. The bomb maker moved quickly but cautiously, surrounded by 4 armed guards who maintained a tight defensive formation. Morrison could see the bulky shape of what appeared to be the weapon Hassan had constructed, carefully secured in a reinforced case carried by 2 of his men. Chun, this is it, Morrison whispered. Target is mobile, range 1,800 meters. Wind is steady from the northeast at 6 miles per hour. Morrison made his final adjustments and settled into his shooting position. Through his scope, he could see Hassan directing his men toward the waiting vehicles. The female sniper was also visible in her position, her rifle trained on the area where Morrison and Chun were concealed. It was clear that she had identified their general location, though she might not have a precise bead on their position. The crosshairs found Hassan as he paused beside the lead vehicle. Morrison controlled his breathing, waiting for the perfect moment when the target would be stationary long enough for a guaranteed hit. Hassan was clearly nervous, constantly scanning the surrounding terrain and moving in an unpredictable pattern designed to frustrate long-range shooters. Morrison's finger found the trigger, applying steady pressure as he prepared to take the shot that would end this deadly game of cat and mouse. Hassan stopped beside the vehicle's open door, presenting a perfect target silhouette against the compound's lighting. The trigger began to break when suddenly, the female sniper's rifle boomed across the desert landscape. Morrison felt the bullet pass inches from his head, close enough that he could hear the supersonic crack as it barely missed his position. The shot had been aimed with surgical precision, designed to disrupt his aim without necessarily killing him. Hassan immediately dove for cover as his guards scattered, clearly trained to respond to sniper fire with immediate defensive action. The carefully orchestrated extraction had dissolved into chaos as everyone sought protection from the unseen marksman they believed was targeting their position. "Chief, that was a warning shot," Chen observed grimly. "She's trying to protect Hassan by keeping us suppressed." Morrison had never encountered such a sophisticated tactical situation. The female sniper was using her position to provide overwatch for Hassan's escape, essentially conducting a counter-sniper mission to neutralize Morrison's threat. Her skills were clearly on par with his own, making this a confrontation between equals. Morrison carefully repositioned his rifle, knowing that his next shot would have to be perfect. The female sniper now knew his exact location and would be ready to engage him the moment he presented a target. This had become a deadly game where the first person to make a mistake would likely not survive. Through his scope, Morrison could see Hassan's guards helping him toward one of the vehicles. The bomb maker was clearly shaken by the proximity of the sniper fire, but his men were professionals who understood the importance of maintaining their protective formation. They were moving Hassan toward the vehicle with the practiced efficiency of a well-trained security detail. The radio crackled with an urgent transmission from base. "Overwatch, base. Aircraft is inbound. ETA 20 minutes. This is your last opportunity to neutralize the target." Morrison felt the pressure of time closing in on him. Hassan would soon be beyond reach, and the devastating weapon he had created would disappear with him. Morrison had never failed a mission of this importance, and he wasn't about to start now. "Chun, I need you to create a distraction," Morrison decided. "Fire a few rounds at the compound to draw that sniper's attention. When she shifts her focus to you, I'll have a clear shot at Hassan." Chen understood the dangerous nature of what Morrison was asking. By revealing his position to draw the female sniper's fire, he would be putting himself directly in harm's way. But Chen had served with Morrison for 3 years and trusted his partner's skills implicitly. Chen positioned himself about 50 meters to the right of Morrison's location and began engaging targets in the compound with his M4 rifle. The automatic fire immediately drew attention from Hassan's defenders, who began returning fire in Chen's direction. As Morrison had hoped, the female sniper shifted her attention to this new threat, trying to identify Chen's exact position. Morrison used this distraction to reacquire Hassan in his scope. The bomb maker had reached the vehicle and was in the process of entering the passenger seat when Morrison's crosshairs settled on his center mass. This was the opportunity Morrison had been waiting for throughout the entire mission. The trigger broke with a clean snap, and Morrison watched the massive .50 caliber bullet streak toward its target. Hassan was halfway into the vehicle when the bullet struck, but at the last second, one of his guards threw himself in front of the bomb maker, taking the fatal shot that had been intended for Hassan. Morrison watched in disbelief as Hassan tumbled into the vehicle, apparently unharmed despite the death of his bodyguard. The driver immediately accelerated away from the compound, kicking up a cloud of dust that obscured Morrison's view of any follow-up shots. The female sniper's rifle boomed again, and Morrison heard Chun cry out as the bullet found its mark. Chun had been hit, though Morrison couldn't immediately determine the severity of his wounds. The tactical situation had deteriorated rapidly, with Hassan escaping and Chun potentially wounded or worse. Morrison made a split-second decision that would define the rest of his military career. Instead of pursuing the escaping vehicles, he chose to move to Chen's aid, unwilling to abandon his partner regardless of the mission's importance. As he reached Chen's position, Morrison could see that his spotter had taken a bullet to the shoulder, but was still conscious and alert. "Chief, don't worry about me," Chen gasped through gritted teeth. "Hassan's getting away with that device." Morrison applied pressure to Chen's wound while scanning the terrain for signs of the female sniper. She had proven to be a worthy adversary, successfully protecting Hassan and neutralizing half of Morrison's team. Her tactical skills and marksmanship abilities were clearly exceptional, representing a level of opposition Morrison had rarely encountered. As the sound of helicopter rotors began to echo across the desert landscape, Morrison realized that Hassan's extraction was proceeding as planned. The bomb maker had successfully evaded the most skilled sniper team the Navy SEALs could deploy, taking his devastating weapon with him to an unknown destination. The radio crackled with the voice of the extraction pilot. Overwatch, this is Eagle Flight. We have visual on your position. Prepare for immediate extraction. Morrison helped Chun to his feet, supporting his wounded partner as they moved toward the landing zone. Behind them, the compound had fallen silent as Hassan's remaining defenders melted away into the darkness. The female sniper had also disappeared, her mission apparently complete with Hassan's successful escape. As the helicopter settled onto the dusty ground and medical personnel rushed to assist Chun, Morrison reflected on the mission that had challenged every skill and instinct he possessed. Hassan had proven to be far more than just a bomb maker. He was a master tactician who had assembled a team capable of outmaneuvering elite special operations forces. The female sniper remained the most intriguing aspect of the entire operation. Her skills were clearly professional grade, suggesting extensive training and combat experience. Morrison found himself wondering about her background and how she had come to be protecting one of Afghanistan's most wanted bomb makers. During the flight back to base, Chun received medical attention for his shoulder wound while Morrison stared out at the passing landscape below. The mission had been a failure in the most fundamental sense. Hassan remained at large with a weapon capable of causing mass casualties. Yet Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that he had learned something valuable about the nature of warfare in the 21st century. Back at the forward operating base, Morrison filed his after-action report with the clinical precision that characterized all his military documentation. He described the tactical challenges posed by Hassan's defensive preparations and the exceptional skills demonstrated by the female counter-sniper. The intelligence value of this information would help future operations against Hassan's network, even if this particular mission had failed. 3 weeks later, Morrison received intelligence that would forever change his understanding of the mission's true nature. Hassan's device had indeed been deployed, but not against the peace talks as originally feared. Instead, the bomb maker had used his creation to eliminate a rival faction that had been threatening civilian populations in remote Afghan villages. The intelligence report also revealed the identity of the female sniper who had so effectively protected Hassan. Captain Sarah Mitchell had been a U.S. Army sniper who had gone missing in action 6 months earlier, presumed dead after her convoy was attacked by insurgents. Intelligence now suggested that she had been captured and subsequently recruited by Hassan's network, either through coercion or ideological conversion. Morrison studied Mitchell's military record with growing amazement. She had been one of the Army's most skilled marksmen, with a record that rivaled Morrison's own achievements. Her transition from American soldier to insurgent protector represented a complexity of modern warfare that few military strategists fully understood. The revelation that he had been engaged in a sniper duel with a former American soldier added layers of moral complexity to what Morrison had initially viewed as a straightforward assassination mission. Mitchell's skills explained the tactical sophistication of Hassan's defensive preparations and the precision with which she had neutralized Chun while allowing Morrison to escape unharmed. 6 months after the failed mission, Morrison received another intelligence report that brought the story full circle. Captain Sarah Mitchell had been killed in action during a coalition raid on Hassan's new compound. She had died defending the bomb maker who had become her new allegiance, demonstrating the same courage and skill that had once made her a decorated American soldier. The report also revealed that Hassan's bomb-making activities had evolved in an unexpected direction. Rather than creating weapons for terrorist attacks, he had begun developing devices specifically designed to clear minefields and unexploded ordnance from civilian areas. The man Morrison had been sent to kill had apparently transformed from a terrorist into someone working to protect innocent lives. Morrison never learned what had motivated Mitchell's apparent change of allegiance or Hassan's evolution from bomb maker to humanitarian. The complexities of warfare in Afghanistan defied simple explanations, creating moral ambiguities that challenged traditional military thinking. The mission remained classified at the highest levels, but Morrison occasionally found himself thinking about the female sniper who had outmaneuvered him in the Afghan desert. Mitchell had demonstrated that skill and courage existed on all sides of the modern battlefield, regardless of the uniform worn or the flag served. Years later, when Morrison retired from active duty and began training the next generation of military snipers, he would often use his encounter with Captain Mitchell as an example of the challenges facing modern warriors. The story illustrated that victory in contemporary warfare required more than just superior marksmanship. It demanded an understanding of the complex human factors that motivated people to fight for causes that outsiders might never fully comprehend. The woman who had missed her target 100 times would be remembered not for her failures, but for the single moment when her skills made the difference between mission success and failure. In the unforgiving landscape of Afghanistan, she had proven that dedication and expertise could overcome seemingly impossible odds, regardless of which side of the conflict possessed them. Morrison's encounter with Hassan and Mitchell remained one of the most challenging missions of his military career, serving as a reminder that even the most skilled professionals could find themselves outmatched by opponents who combined tactical expertise with intimate knowledge of the terrain and cultural context in which they operated. The desert had taught him that warfare was far more complex than simple marksmanship, requiring adaptability and respect for the skills of one's adversaries.